Most people think China's biggest source of leverage is a navy, an air force, or the possibility of a Taiwan crisis. It may not be, because one of Beijing's most powerful weapons is quieter than ships and missiles. It sits inside the supply chains that power your phone, your car, military hardware, wind turbines, guided weapons, advanced chips, medical imaging, and industrial manufacturing. And when that leverage tightens, the ripple effects can spread faster than most people expect. That is why this is such a strong story for your channel. It takes a huge China topic and makes it specific, practical, and personal. People understand ships and warplanes, but they pay closer attention when they realize the real pressure point might be hidden inside the products they already use. Reuters reports that Japan and France have agreed on a roadmap to deepen rare earth cooperation, with Tokyo also looking to Australia as it tries to reduce dependence on China. Reuters has also reported worsening shortages of materials like yttrium and scandium for U.S. aerospace and semiconductor firms. That tells you the world is already moving. Not because this risk might emerge someday, but because policymakers know it is here now. That should tell viewers something important. This is not fear marketing. Governments and industries are moving money, diplomacy, and industrial strategy because they see a real structural problem. If you want geopolitical breakdowns that go beyond battlefield maps and explain what could actually hit your wallet, your tech, and your future, like this video, share it, and subscribe. Viewers also intuitively understand hidden dependency. It creates a more intriguing hook than obvious military danger because it feels like a vulnerability hiding in plain sight. Rare earths sound boring until you realize what they touch. Electric vehicles depend on them. Precision electronics depend on them. Jet engines, radars, missile guidance, magnets, lasers, defense systems, and key clean energy components all depend on them in one form or another. In many cases, the critical issue is not the ore in the ground. It is refining, processing, and the industrial ecosystem built around it. And that is where China has accumulated enormous influence. If one country dominates key steps in the chain, then geopolitical tension can turn an industrial dependency into strategic pressure almost overnight. The public conversation often skips straight to mining, but mining is only one piece. Refining, separation, chemistry, specialized manufacturing, and decades of industrial know-how can matter just as much. A country can have mineral deposits and still remain strategically exposed if it lacks the processing chain. That is why Japan is moving so deliberately. Tokyo learned this lesson years ago when China tightened rare earth exports during an earlier dispute. Since then, Japan has tried to diversify, invest, recycle, and build alternative partnerships. The new France and Australia moves show that effort is still accelerating. When countries with advanced industries and strong security interests start scrambling for mineral resilience, they are telling you something important. They do not trust the old supply model anymore. Japan's strategy is useful because it is not just about finding a new seller. It is about building an entire risk management system. Alternative suppliers, strategic relationships, recycling, industrial planning, and political will. That is what real diversification looks like. This matters for your audience because it ties geopolitics directly to everyday life. Viewers do not need to be mining experts to understand what happens when a choke point appears inside the products they use every day. Cars get more expensive, electronics become harder to source, defense procurement slows down, industrial projects become more expensive, production schedules slip, and when those pressures pile up, companies pass costs along while governments call it strategic adjustment. It also lets you connect geopolitics to the algorithm in a smarter way. Instead of another China versus Taiwan upload, this becomes China can pressure the world through cars, chips, and defense. That headline is easier for broader audiences to feel in their own lives. There is also a deeper strategic lesson here. The future of power is not just about who has the largest military. It is also about who controls the invisible parts of modern civilization. The minerals, the processing plants, the specialist chemistry, the component chains, and the rare inputs that advanced systems cannot easily replace. That is why this story is fresher than another generic Taiwan explainer. It lets you say something more interesting. China does not need to fire a shot to create leverage. In some sectors, it can create pain simply by tightening access to what everyone else still needs. And remember, supply chain pressure rarely arrives as one dramatic cutoff. Often it arrives as delays, narrow shortages, higher prices, less flexibility, nervous buyers, and companies quietly competing for the same constrained inputs. Slow pressure can be just as powerful as sudden pressure. The smartest powers are now treating supply chains the way they used to treat sea lanes, as something that must be secured, diversified, and defended before a crisis peaks. And that raises the key question for the West and its partners. Can they really diversify fast enough? Alternative projects take time. Processing facilities take time. Permitting takes time. Environmental fights take time. Skilled labor takes time. Money helps, but time is usually the bottleneck. So even when governments announce diversification plans, markets know the vulnerability does not disappear the next day. The gap between policy announcement and industrial reality is where risk lives. That lag is where market anxiety grows. Policymakers announce multi-year solutions, but companies still need materials this quarter. Defense contractors still need inputs this year. Automakers still need magnets and components now. The gap between ambition and availability is where leverage lives. Watch the next phase carefully. Watch for new bilateral deals. Watch for public subsidies into refining. Watch for strategic stockpiles. Watch for any new Chinese controls or quiet bottlenecks that make buyers nervous. And pay attention to how often the phrase critical minerals shows up in speeches that are supposedly about security, trade, or industrial policy. That overlap is the whole story. It means the line between economics and national security has almost vanished. If you start seeing minerals discussed in the same breath as missiles, alliances, and national resilience, that is because modern power has become deeply material. The hardware of the future depends on a few very unglamorous ingredients, and whoever dominates those ingredients gains a quiet but serious edge. That is why this topic can drive watch time. The audience begins with one question about China, but stays because the video expands into cars, chips, weapons, industry, and the future cost of living all at once. So when people ask what China's hidden weapon is, the answer may not be just ships near Taiwan. It may be control over the materials that keep advanced economies and advanced militaries running. That is the kind of fresh geopolitical content that can break through because it is not just fear. It is a systems story. And systems stories are where the real leverage hides. Comment below, what scares you more, a military showdown or a supply chain choke point that hits the world without a single missile launch?